Hey everyone, and welcome back to English BookCast. We're so glad you're joining us again for another deep dive.
Yes, welcome back.
If you're digging these deep dives and finding them, valuable and interesting, please do hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends.
Indeed,
All that good stuff helps the channel grow
it really does.
and helps us reach more curious minds out there.
Absolutely.
So today we are going to be taking a look at a really pivotal period in the life and work of a truly singular figure,
Yeah,
G.I. Gurdjieff.
quite a figure.
So our primary source for this deep dive is Gurdjieff's Petersburg to Fontainebleau,
Okay.
a movement and institute. And what makes this source particularly interesting is that it offers a firsthand perspective
Right.
on the evolution of Gurdjieff's ideas
Yes.
and the establishment of his very influential center.
It's a really valuable account.
Okay, so think of this as sort of a backstage pass to understanding the early sparks of Gurdjieff's movement. The often quite dramatic reasons behind its various geographical shifts across, a really turbulent historical landscape.
Yeah, in a time of great upheaval.
And then some of the foundational teachings that underpinned this whole endeavor.
Exactly.
What makes this account particularly valuable, I think, is it offers a window into the practical challenges
Yes.
and the sheer force of will required to translate a profound philosophical and spiritual vision into a tangible working school, all against a backdrop of war and revolution.
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite a feat
Yeah.
to pull that off.
Okay, so let's unpack this.
Okay.
The narrative begins with the author's initial encounter with Gurdjieff in Moscow.
Sure.
And it's immediately clear that Gurdjieff wasn't your average individual.
Definitely not.
The author felt this distinct sense that Gurdjieff understood something fundamental about what he was seeking, even touching upon those rather mysterious experiences encountered in India.
Yeah, hinting at something beyond the ordinary.
What struck you most about this initial meeting?
Well, I think what's fascinating is this immediate rapport and profound understanding that the narrator describes. It suggests that Gurdjieff possessed this remarkable ability to perceive and connect with individuals at a very deep level.
Okay.
Almost as if he could see past the surface noise,
Yeah.
to their core questions and longings.
Yeah.
And the mention of unexplained phenomena from India hints at a knowledge base that transcended the conventional wisdom of the time.
Right.
So it sparks this sense in the narrator that Gurdjieff held some significant keys.
It certainly paints a picture of someone with a rather unique and compelling presence.
Yes, absolutely.
And it wasn't long before the practical realities of Gurdjieff's approach came into focus.
Right.
He explicitly stated that his work was not of a charitable nature, and that those who wished to learn were expected to finance their own participation.
He was very clear about that.
Yeah. And he even went so far as to say that people do not value a thing if they do not pay for it.
That's a pretty direct statement.
Yeah. That's a pretty direct and perhaps even challenging way of framing things.
Well, it raises an important question about the psychology of value, doesn't it?
Okay, yeah.
Gurdjieff's perspective suggests a belief that genuine commitment and serious engagement are often linked to a tangible investment.
Yeah.
By requiring a financial contribution, he may have been aiming to cultivate a group of pupils who were truly dedicated
Right.
and willing to exert effort.
Okay.
It also speaks to his own self-reliance and his determination to build his work on a foundation of personal responsibility,
Yeah.
both for himself and for his students.
It makes you wonder if he was trying to filter out those who were merely casually curious
Yes,
versus those with a real thirst for something deeper.
exactly.
Oh.
That's a very insightful point.
Yeah.
It definitely sets a high bar for entry.
Right.
Moving on, the text delves into one of Gurdjieff's core ideas,
Yeah.
the concept of multiple eyes residing within a single person.
Okay.
He illustrated the inherent difficulty of self-knowledge.
With the very relatable example of how incredibly hard it is to keep a secret.
Yeah.
Precisely because these different eyes have their own desires and impulses.
Okay. We've all been there.
It presents a rather non-unitary view of the self, doesn't it?
It does.
It makes you think about those times you've made a promise to yourself and then almost immediately broken it.
It's a foundational element of his teaching.
Yeah.
This notion that we are not a single consistent I, but rather a collection of often conflicting and unaware eyes,
Yeah.
has profound implications for how we understand our own behavior and motivations.
Okay.
It suggests that our actions and even our beliefs can shift depending on which eye is in charge at any given moment,
Right?
leading to inconsistencies, internal contradictions,
Yeah.
and a fundamental lack of true self-mastery.
Right.
The inability to keep a secret then becomes a very concrete illustration of this inner fragmentation.
Okay.
One, I might genuinely intend to keep it, but another, I, driven by a different impulse, might blurt it out without conscious control.
Right, right.
Think of it like a committee where different members have different agendas,
Yeah.
and no single voice is consistently in command.
That analogy really helps to clarify the concept. It certainly resonates with those experiences of feeling pulled in different directions
Right.
or acting in ways that seem out of character.
Exactly, yeah.
Gurdjieff also distinguished between philosophical, theoretical, and practical schools,
Okay.
asserting that his work aimed to unite these three essential aspects of learning.
Interesting.
He even mentioned his travels with various specialists to gather a wide range of knowledge.
Right.
This sounds like a very holistic and experience-driven approach to understanding.
Precisely. His goal wasn't simply to acquire abstract intellectual knowledge
Right.
or to engage in purely theoretical speculation.
Right.
He sought a complete synthesis
Yeah.
that integrated philosophical understanding with practical application and direct personal experience.
Okay, yeah.
And his travels with specialists from diverse fields underscore his commitment to building a comprehensive system based on a rich tapestry of knowledge drawn from various traditions and disciplines.
Yeah.
He wasn't just interested in thinking about things.
Right.
He wanted to understand them in a way that could be lived and embodied.
Okay, so from these initial encounters in Moscow and the unveiling of some of these core ideas, the narrative shifts to a period of immense external disruption,
Okay.
the impact of World War I,
Yes.
and the subsequent Russian Revolution.
Right. A tumultuous time.
The text recounts how the war significantly interfered with Gurdjieff's unfolding plans in Moscow, leading to the heartbreaking loss of both pupils and valuable equipment.
It must have been a tremendous setback.
Yeah, it must have been a tremendous setback, forcing a radical reevaluation of his situation.
Well, undoubtedly, the outbreak of war acted as this brutal external force
Yeah.
that directly impacted the fragile early stages of Gurdjieff's movement.
Right.
The loss of both human connections
Yeah.
and the material resources essential for his work would have presented truly formidable obstacles to continuing in Moscow.
Yeah.
It highlights the vulnerability of even the most profound endeavors to the unpredictable tides of history.
And it appears that this significant disruption served as a catalyst for a series of geographical shifts.
Right.
The group moved from Moscow to Petersburg and then further south to the Caucasus region amidst the escalating turmoil of the Bolshevik Revolution in October of 1917.
A period of intense change.
Life at Essentuki is described as a period of intense activity,
Okay.
with a growing number of individuals engaging in a diverse array of exercises, mental disciplines, strenuous physical practices,
Right.
the mesmerizing dervish dances, and even what are referred to as psychic tricks.
Interesting.
What can we infer about the nature and purpose of these varied practices?
Well, the sheer variety and intensity of the exercises at Essentuki strongly suggest a multifaceted approach to self-development. The mental exercises likely aimed at sharpening attention, cultivating inner awareness, and perhaps challenging ingrained patterns of thought.
Okay.
The physical exercises, including the dervish dances, were likely designed to integrate the mind and body,
Yeah.
fostering a different kind of consciousness
Right.
that moves beyond purely intellectual understanding.
Right. Right.
Now, the mention of psychic tricks might sound a bit sensational,
Yeah.
but historical accounts suggest these were more likely exercises intended to develop unusual forms of perception
Right.
or highly focused intention.
Okay.
Think of it perhaps as pushing the boundaries of normal sensory experience
Yeah.
or exploring the power of concentrated mental energy.
Ultimately, this holistic approach aimed to work on the individual on multiple levels simultaneously,
Yes.
intellectual, emotional, and physical, to catalyze a more integrated and awakened state.
Precisely.
It paints a vivid picture of a dedicated community, deeply immersed in this rather unconventional work, pushing their boundaries in various ways.
Yeah, it sounds like a very intense and immersive environment.
However, this period of intense focus was not to last.
Right.
The text recounts the unavoidable necessity of leaving Russia
Okay.
due to the spreading warfare and devastating epidemics, with this distant goal of establishing a center in London.
New destination.
This must have been an incredibly challenging time.
Yeah.
Marked by significant uncertainty and forced migration.
Absolutely.
Imagine the courage and resilience required to uproot everything and journey across a continent in such turbulent times,
Yeah.
all in pursuit of a vision.
Well, the decision to leave Russia was undoubtedly driven by the sheer impossibility of continuing their work
Right.
amidst the chaos and danger of the Civil War
Yeah.
and the very real threat of disease.
Yeah.
The choice of London as their eventual destination likely reflected an assessment of where they might find a more stable and receptive environment
Right.
to rebuild and continue their mission.
Okay.
It speaks volumes about Gurdjieff's unwavering commitment to his work and his ability to navigate extraordinary adversity.
From this period of displacement and uncertainty, the narrative transitions to the gradual establishment of more formal structures,
Right.
the institutes.
Okay.
We learn about the initial formation of a group in Rostov and the subsequent opening of the very first institute in Tiflis.
Wow, a significant step.
This marks a significant step towards solidifying the movement and creating a dedicated space for teaching and practice.
It is a move from a more nomadic existence to planting roots, however tentatively.
The opening of the institute in Tiflis represents a crucial turning point.
Yeah.
It signifies a deliberate move towards a more organized and structured framework
Right.
for the systematic transmission of his ideas and methods. The initial gathering of a committed group in Rostov likely provided the essential nucleus
Yeah.
and the driving force behind this significant undertaking.
It was the first tangible manifestation of his vision for a dedicated center of inner work.
The journey, however, was far from over.
Right.
The group continued to move, eventually reaching Constantinople,
Okay.
a bustling hub where they attracted even more individuals interested in Gurdjieff's teachings.
Right.
It's noted that the Institute continued its activities there.
Okay.
And interestingly, Gurdjieff authorized the writing and publication of a book during this period.
That's interesting.
This suggests a growing awareness of the need to document and disseminate these complex ideas
Yes.
to a wider audience. Beyond those in his immediate circle,
Right.
it's a move towards leaving a more permanent record.
Constantinople, as a major international crossroads at that time, undoubtedly offered a broader reach
Right.
and greater opportunities to connect with a diverse range of individuals who were seeking alternative paths
Yeah.
and deeper understanding.
Yeah.
The authorization of a book is a pivotal development, indicating a strategic shift towards a more lasting form of disseminating his teachings,
Right.
moving beyond the limitations of direct person-to-person instruction.
Yeah.
It was a way to solidify his ideas, make them accessible to a larger audience,
Right.
even those who might not have direct access to his institutes.
And then came the decisive move to relocate the central work to London in 1921,
Okay.
followed shortly by the truly significant establishment of the Institute at Fontainebleau, the now famous Château de la Prairie.
A very famous location.
This location would become indelibly linked with Gurdjieff's name and his profound influence on Western spiritual and philosophical thought.
Yes.
What do you think were the key factors that drew him to establish his primary center at this particular location?
Well, Fontainebleau, and specifically the Château de la Prairie, offered a unique combination of factors.
Yeah.
That likely made it an ideal location for the intensive
Right.
and somewhat unconventional work Gurdjieff envisioned. Its relative seclusion, outside the immediate pressures and distractions of a major metropolis like London, provided a more conducive environment for the demanding practices, the communal living, and the introspective atmosphere
Right.
that were integral to his institute.
Okay.
Moreover, the physical space of the chateau itself, with its grounds, likely offered the necessary space for the various physical movements
Right.
and activities that were part of his system.
Yeah.
It also perhaps represented a more permanent and symbolic base
Right.
from which to exert his influence on the Western world,
Yeah.
a kind of intentional retreat and center of gravity for his evolving movement.
The text provides us with glimpses into the daily life
Okay.
and activities at Fontainebleau, including his talks, the various exercises, and notably the meeting with the celebrated writer Catherine Mansfield.
Interesting.
and Gurdjieff's intriguing concepts around breathing through movements.
Yeah.
This paints a picture of a very embodied and experiential approach to inner work,
Right.
not just intellectual discussion.
Right.
The idea of breathing through movements is quite evocative.
The activities at Fontainebleau underscore the profoundly practical orientation of Gurdjieff's system.
Mm-hmm.
The notion of breathing through movements suggests a deep and intentional connection
Okay.
between physical action, breath, and inner states of being.
Yeah.
It implies that specific physical movements, when performed consciously,
Mm-hmm.
could influence one's breathing patterns and consequently one's level of awareness and even emotional state.
Yeah.
The interaction with someone like Catherine Mansfield,
Right.
a prominent figure in the literary world,
Yeah.
highlights the broad appeal of his ideas to individuals from diverse backgrounds,
Right.
including those deeply engaged in creative and introspective pursuits.
Okay.
It suggests that his teachings resonated with a wide spectrum of human experience.
Furthering this outreach and introduction to a wider public, Gurdjieff and his students held demonstrations in Paris at the prestigious Théâtre des Champs-Élysées.
A very public display.
Yeah, this public exposure must have been a significant step in introducing his often unconventional work
Right.
to a much larger audience, creating curiosity and perhaps even controversy.
Yeah, you can imagine.
Imagine the impact of witnessing these unusual movements and hearing his ideas presented in such a public forum.
Well, demonstrations at a venue as prominent as the Théâtre des Champs-Élysées would have undoubtedly generated considerable buzz
Right.
and discussion around Gurdjieff's teachings
Yeah.
and the unique and often striking movements he had developed. It served as a powerful and very public way to showcase the practical, almost performative aspects of his system,
Right.
sparking curiosity and attracting individuals who might not otherwise have encountered his ideas. It was a bold move
Yeah.
to bring this very internal work into the external world in such a visible way.
However, Gurdjieff's direct and constant presence at Fontainebleau was not to be a permanent fixture.
Okay.
The text notes his departure for America in 1924 and the subsequent decision by some of his students to continue the work independently in London.
Interesting.
This marks yet another significant shift in the organizational structure and the spread of his movement,
Right.
indicating a degree of decentralization
Okay.
and the growing capacity of his students to carry on his principles.
Well, Gurdjieff's journey to America represented a strategic expansion of his influence beyond the European continent,
Yeah.
aiming to introduce his teachings to a new audience and perhaps find new avenues of support.
Right.
The decision of some of his London-based pupils to continue their work independently suggests that the seeds of his teachings had taken firm root,
Okay.
and that individuals felt empowered and capable of carrying on the essential practices and principles, even in his physical absence.
Yeah.
It also hints at the possibility of different interpretations and adaptations of his core ideas as the movement began to evolve and spread.
Now let's delve more deeply into some of Gurdjieff's fundamental ideas as they are outlined in the text. A central concept, as we touched upon earlier, is the absence of unity in man and the multiplicity of eyes.
Yeah, a core principle.
The text reiterates this, emphasizing that a human being is not a single coherent entity with a unified will.
Right.
This really challenges our conventional understanding of ourselves.
It does indeed. This core idea is absolutely crucial for grasping Gurdjieff's entire psychological framework.
Yeah.
The assertion that we lack inherent unity and are instead a collection of numerous, often contradictory eyes,
Right.
implies that our thoughts, feelings, and actions are frequently driven by these different uncoordinated parts of ourselves,
Yeah.
leading to internal friction, a lack of consistent purpose, and ultimately a profound lack of genuine self-control.
Yeah.
Recognizing this fundamental fragmentation is presented as the very first and essential step towards the possibility of inner integration
Right.
and true self-knowing.
Okay.
Until we see this multiplicity, Gurdjieff suggests, we are simply being lived by these various eyes, rather than consciously directing our own lives.
Building directly upon this, the text introduces the concept of the human machine
Okay.
and the existence of different psychic centers.
Right.
It suggests that we largely function in a somewhat automatic, mechanical way, driven by these distinct centers, the intellectual, the emotional, and the moving or instinctive, which may not always operate in harmony or under conscious direction.
All right.
It's a rather sobering view of our default state.
The analogy of the human machine is the powerful one,
Yeah.
underscoring Gurdjieff's observation that much of our behavior is habitual,
Mm-hmm.
reactive,
Yeah.
and largely unconscious.
Yeah.
The psychic centers intellectual, emotional, and moving
Mm-hmm.
represent different but interconnected aspects of our functioning.
Okay.
Gurdjieff's system aims at bringing conscious awareness and intentional control to these centers,
Mm-hmm.
fostering a greater sense of balance, integration, and conscious action.
Right.
It's about moving from being a poorly maintained machine
Yeah.
to becoming a consciously directed and well-functioning one.
The text then presents a rather stark contrast between Gurdjieff's perspective and what it terms the European idea of man's evolution,
Okay.
stating quite directly that mechanical progress in man's evolution is impossible.
Right.
This is a rather provocative statement
Yes.
that challenges the prevailing Western belief in continuous and automatic progress.
Well, it is indeed a challenge to the conventional Western narrative of linear progress
Yeah.
and the often implicit assumption that technological and societal advancements automatically translate into a corresponding evolution of human consciousness or being.
Okay.
Gurdjieff argued vehemently that true and meaningful evolution requires conscious individual effort, intentional inner work, and a deliberate striving for self-transformation,
Right.
not just passive absorption of external changes.
Okay, yeah.
He believed that without this inner work, humanity remains trapped in its mechanical patterns,
Yeah.
regardless of external progress.
Yeah. He also touches upon the profound connectedness of everything in nature,
Okay.
including what might seem like a rather surprising relationship between humanity and the moon.
Interesting.
This speaks to a very holistic and perhaps even esoteric worldview,
Yes.
suggesting interdependencies that go far beyond our everyday understanding of the cosmos.
Well, the interconnectedness of all phenomena is a recurring theme in many spiritual and philosophical traditions.
Right.
Gurdjieff's specific ideas concerning the relationship between humanity and the moon,
Mm-hmm.
while perhaps appearing unconventional
Yeah.
or even esoteric to a modern scientific perspective,
Right.
likely point towards a more subtle energetic exchange
Okay.
and a deeper level of influence between celestial bodies and life on Earth,
Yeah.
operating beyond the realm of our ordinary sensory perception and conscious awareness.
It suggests a universe where everything is intricately linked and interdependent in ways we are only beginning to comprehend, if at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
The text emphasizes the advantage of the individual man over the masses
Okay.
in terms of potential for genuine development,
Mm-hmm.
coupled with the crucial necessity of knowing the human machine.
Right.
This really underscores the importance of individual effort
Yes.
and self-awareness as the foundation for any real transformation.
Gurdjieff firmly believed that genuine and lasting transformation begins at the individual level.
Mm-hmm.
While acknowledging the limitations and often unconscious nature of mass movements,
Right.
he stressed that each person possesses an inherent potential for self-development.
Okay.
However, this potential can only be realized through dedicated individual effort
Yeah.
and by acquiring a practical working understanding of one's own inner mechanisms,
Right.
that human machine we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
Without this self-knowledge, any attempts at growth are likely to be haphazard and ineffective.
He speaks of the union of knowledge and being as the essence of great doing,
Okay.
something that can only be achieved through one's own sustained efforts, and includes the powerful and rather challenging saying, "No one can give a man what he did not possess before."
Right.
This really highlights the active and deeply personal nature of the path to self-improvement in his system.
This emphasizes the experiential and deeply personal nature of Gurdjieff's teaching.
Yeah.
True understanding and meaningful growth are not simply matters of intellectual acquisition
Right.
or passively receiving information from an external source.
Right.
Instead, they arise from the active integration of knowledge with one's own being
Yeah.
through sustained and conscious effort.
Okay.
The saying itself is quite potent, suggesting that genuine inner development is not about acquiring something entirely new from the outside,
Right.
but rather about the unfolding and realization of potentials that already lie dormant within us.
Okay.
It underscores the idea that self-work is ultimately an inside job.
The text also places significant emphasis on the use of symbols within the system, with particular attention given to the Enneagram as a principal symbol. Okay.
And the understanding of the law of 7 in union with the law of 3.
Right.
He even makes the rather emphatic statement, What a man cannot put into the Enneagram, he does not understand.
Yes.
This clearly positions the Enneagram as a central framework for comprehending his complex ideas.
For Gurdjieff, the Enneagram was far more than just an abstract geometric figure.
Okay.
It served as a dynamic and multifaceted symbol that encapsulated fundamental cosmic laws,
Right.
the interconnectedness of various processes,
Yeah.
and the very structure of both the universe and the human psyche.
Okay.
His assertion that what a man cannot put into the Enneagram he does not understand underscores its absolute centrality
Yeah.
as a key to unlocking the deeper principles of his system.
Right.
He believed that the Enneagram provided a universal language for understanding the cyclical nature of processes, the interplay of forces,
Right.
and the inherent patterns of creation, maintenance, and decay in all things.
Okay.
It was for him a map of reality itself. And this understanding of the Enneagram isn't purely intellectual, is it?
No, not at all.
The text mentions experiencing the Enneagram through movement and exercises as a universal language.
Right.
This suggests a very practical and embodied way of engaging with this powerful symbol, moving beyond mere theoretical comprehension.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Gurdjieff's approach to the Enneagram wasn't just about studying it as a diagram
Right.
or a set of abstract principles.
Right.
He developed specific movements, postures, and exercises
Yeah.
that were directly linked to the Enneagram's structure and its underlying laws.
Right.
This practical embodied engagement allowed for a deeper, more visceral understanding of the symbol,
Okay.
moving beyond the limitations of purely intellectual grasp. By experiencing the Enneagram through movement, it could become a living, breathing reality,
Yeah.
a universal language that could be felt and understood on a much deeper level,
Yeah.
applicable to a wide range of human experience and natural processes.
Finally, the excerpt touches upon the intriguing distinction between objective and subjective art, noting that objective music is based on inner octaves,
Right.
and that mechanical humanity can only produce subjective art.
Yeah.
This offers a rather unique and potentially challenging perspective on the nature and value of artistic expression.
It does.
It suggests that not all art is created equal in its impact and potential.
This distinction is quite significant within Gurdjieff's framework.
Yeah.
Objective art, according to his teachings, is not merely an expression of the artist's personal feelings
Right.
or subjective experiences.
Right.
Instead, it arises from a deeper, conscious understanding of fundamental cosmic laws and is intentionally created to transmit specific knowledge,
Okay.
evoke particular states of being,
Yeah.
or have a definite, predictable effect on the perceiver.
Okay.
The reference to inner octaves in objective music links it to the law of octaves,
Yeah.
suggesting a precise and intentional structuring of sound that resonates with deeper universal principles. Right. Expert speaker.